when you hear the word midlife, it's often followed by the word crisis. Entrepreneur and author Chip Conley wants us to reframe our thinking around that word midlife. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Your latest book is called Learning to Love Midlife 12 Reasons Why Life Gets Better with Age, and it's in stores now. Let's talk a little bit about midlife. Is it a certain mindset or is it a certain age that we're talking about?
Well, it's interesting. Great question, Rudy. Because when I first started studying midlife, it was because I was going through my own hard challenge in my late 40s. And I was told midlife was from 40 to 65. But now a lot of academics say it's from 35 to 75. So it's like a marathon. I think it's more of a stage of life, though. It's a time that's in between your early adulthood and your later adulthood. It's like this bridge, but it may be a bridge over troubled waters. But actually, for a lot of people, it is because the late 40s can be the lowest time for life satisfaction for people. But what's interesting, Rudy, is that in our 50s, 60s, and 70s, we get happier. It's called the U curve of happiness. And so I wanted to bring to light with this book what I'd learned in my own life, but also what I'd learned at the world's first midlife wisdom school that I created called MEA, Modern Elder Academy. And the basic learning is, you know what, life gets better with age. And that's the subtitle of this book, 12 Reasons Why Life Gets Better with Age.
I mean, and that's what I love too about this is because you mentioned it starts at 35. And oftentimes when we have those milestone birthdays, 35, 40, 45, 50, 55, 60, is you start thinking about the things that you've done or the things that you wish you would have done differently. Talk a little bit about maybe those pressures that are on there, because as teenagers, we have high school counselors, we have teachers, we have people we can go through. When we get to retirement age, we have, AARP and different organizations we can go through, but you're kind of left on your own, during
Oh
midlife.
my gosh, you are so right. You've read the book, or you're like a midlife expert already. Come on, this is amazing. Yeah, we go through adolescence with a lot of support and guardrails, and yet we don't go through middlescence, which is the adult form of adolescence. We don't go through middlescence with a lot of guardrails or support. We don't have schools or tools or rites of passage or rituals. And so we go through it alone, and often we're suffering alone, and we're thinking we're getting the game of life wrong. And this is part of the reason I wrote the book also, because I lost 5 friends to suicide during the Great Recession, all of them men, age 42 to 52. And so I wanted to help bring to light what gets better with age. Because if you're struggling in your mid 40s and you're feeling like, oh my God, I'm struggling through my midlife crisis, and on the other side of that, all I have is disease, decrepitude, and death, then what do you have to look forward to? But the fact is, the U curve of happiness research shows that people get happier after a low point between 45 and 50, starting in our 50s and beyond. We get happier with each decade.
Let's talk a little bit. I mean, you just mentioned what you saw some of your male friends going through, and mental health and men, especially during these ages, where you might struggle, with family, you might struggle with relationships, you might struggle with finances, and maybe not having that support system. But what's something that somebody can do, especially, if they're at a low point in their life, or they're kind of looking at this point and like, I don't know how I'm going to make it through the next couple of years.
So the most important thing is, first of all, if you have like serious depression or suicidal ideation, look for help. I mean, that's, you got to do that. But even if you don't have that, even if you're just sort of going through what feels like a blah period, then still look for help. And when I say help, it doesn't have to be a therapist or a counselor. It literally could be your best friend or a family member or a spouse. And just be open to talking about what's going on for you. Yes, read books like mine, Learning to Love Midlife, or do a course, an online course. We have online courses at MEA. We also have 2 campuses, one in Baja in Mexico and one in Santa Fe, New Mexico. So spend a little bit of investment on how do you actually get out of this rut, because it's not unusual for people to feel stuck in their 40s, 30s, 40s, and 50s. Or at any age, but those are some of the core of early and core of midlife. So I just want to say, it can get better, but it won't if you're just sitting on the couch and doing nothing about it.
Oh, exactly. You also talk about, we talk a lot about anti-aging products, but you talk about pro-aging. Talk a little bit about pro-aging versus anti-aging.
Yeah, we have an anti-aging industrial complex. It's often an anti-women complex because it's about a lot of times face creams and things like that are going to make you look younger. What I believe is that it's fine to actually do everything you can to look as young as you can be. That's perfectly fine. And yet, if you're living in that world, you're sort of saying that the playing field of life is your physical body. And the truth is, there's a lot of things that get better with age, and they're your heart in terms of how emotionally intelligent you are. They're your wisdom and your brain and your gut. There's your relations and being better in relations with other people. There's spiritual curiosity. There's a lot that gets better with age. And so what I really wanted to bring light to with MEA or Wisdom School, but also this book, was 12 specific reasons why life gets better with age. Everything from the fact that, as I said, emotional intelligence grows, to the fact that we learn in midlife how to edit our lives. The first half of our life, we're accumulating. The second half of life, we are discerning in how we edit our lives.
Oh, exactly. I mean, sometimes you have those things you've held on to, when you're in your teen years or your 20s and your 30s, and you kind of get to a point where you're like, this doesn't matter anymore. Why am I thinking about it so much?
So much. I mean, you know, am I wiser today about how I show up in the world? Yeah, I am, and I'm 63. Was I wiser at 53 than 43 than 33? Yes. And in that journey, I actually learned how to make peace with myself and others in ways that I couldn't do that in my 20s and my 30s. I held on to grudges. I held on to resentments. I was hyper competitive and constantly comparing myself with everybody else. And you know what? At some point, I realized comparison is the recipe for suffering.
I want to ask you a question because I talked about this with some of my family members, some of my older family members who often hang out with people their age, and they're like, oh, how's so-and-so doing? Well, they have this medical problem or this is going on. And they kind of don't have that like spark that they used to. And I was like, maybe try to find like a younger friend where maybe not everything is so doom and gloom. What advice do you have for somebody like in their in their 40s who may, describe, themselves in midlife? Should you try to find maybe an older friend to say like, hey, things don't look as bad, or now I have a better outlook, or maybe somebody younger to kind of reinvigorate you?
We have a very age segregated society, especially in the United States. And if you ask people what percentage of your friends are at least 10 years older or at least 10 years younger, and you do the math with them, they realize that over 80% of their friends are almost their same age. And what that misses then is the opportunity to learn from people older and younger than you. So yes, it's really important for us to actually create something that allows us to come together and learn from each other. We have an initiative called Generations Over Dinner at generationsoverdinner.com. It's free. It just has a bunch of questions that you could pose to each other at a dinner with multiple generations at the dinner. We've had as many as 7 generations at a dinner table together. So yes, intergenerational collaboration is really important both in our social life and family life, but especially in our work life. We have 5 generations in the workplace for the first time.
Oh my goodness, I love that. I'm definitely going to go check out the website as soon as this interview is over. And then final question. I know for me, sometimes, I would say, LOL or YOLO, and there was these certain phrases that were in pop culture that like my parents didn't necessarily, they're like, what are you saying? What's going on? And now I find myself hearing those phrases, and I was like, I try to keep up. And then at one point you're like, I'm not going to be cool anymore. I can't keep up anymore. What was it for you as far as like embracing midlife that you were like, I can't keep up with this anymore?
I loved moving from FOMO to JOMO, from the fear of missing out to the joy of missing out. And what I mean by that is realizing that the kinds of things I used to do because I was obligated or supposed to do it, or I thought if I go do that, I'm going to be happier. I came to realize that so many of those things are available to me without having to go out and be with everybody else. I mean, whether it's just having an intimate conversation with a friend, going for a walk with my dog, or hanging out in a bathtub with my favorite book. So I think I've become a little bit more of an introvert, and I appreciate that.
Awesome. Chip, thank you so much for your time today. Learning to Love Midlife, 12 Reasons Why Life Gets Better with Age, in stores now. And thank you so much for your time today.
Thanks so much.